A billionaire with no salary still drives a new car and pays surprisingly little tax. The quiet trick isn't earning more. It's never selling the stuff that's going up. Here's the model wealthy families use. Buy assets, avoid selling, borrow for spending, and then pass them along. It sounds like magic, but it's a set of ordinary rules that fit together. Capital gains are generally taxed when you sell or exchange an asset, not while you simply hold it. So if you never sell, you don't realize that gain today, and there isn't a sale to tax. Wealthy people start by buying things that can grow over time: stocks, a business, real estate, even a broad fund. Holding avoids triggering a sale, but it creates a new problem. How do you pay for life without selling? Answer 1 is collateralized borrowing. Use the asset as security, take a line of credit, and spend the cash. Rates float, and there's risk if collateral drops, but borrowing avoids a taxable sale today. A loan gives you cash and a matching obligation to repay, so the cash itself isn't income when you receive it. That's the quiet door. Spend borrowed money while holding the asset, and you still haven't sold. Portfolio credit usually floats. Lenders tie your rate to a benchmark plus a spread that depends on size. So borrowing costs can rise or fall, and larger lines often get cheaper pricing than smaller ones. Over long stretches, broad U.S. stocks have averaged roughly 10% a year before inflation, with big swings. If expected growth beats your interest rate, borrowing can fund spending while you hold. If it doesn't, leverage drags. Lines are capped by collateral. Lenders lend only a fraction of the asset's value, and that room changes as prices move. That fraction is your cushion. Less cushion means a smaller buffer before the lender demands action. If collateral falls too far, a maintenance call can require cash, more collateral, or fast repayment. Rates can jump, too. Variable pricing means costs change mid-plan, sometimes right when markets are rough. So why borrow at all? Because wages are taxed when paid, while loans give spendable cash without a sale. For some wealthy people, that means less salary pressure. Their assets quietly bankroll life while taxes wait. This pattern is legal because it stacks existing rules. Tax on sale, loans aren't income, collateralized credit is allowed. But costs, lender limits, and risk matter. Next, follow how the debt rolls while the asset keeps compounding. Here's the loop in practice. Spend borrowed cash, pay interest, then refinance instead of selling when collateral is healthy. As assets grow, the same loan feels smaller against them, so lenders may extend or reset your line. Many portfolio lines require regular interest payments while principal can roll, subject to limits and collateral checks. That shapes cash flow, an ongoing interest bill today, with a large balance pushed into the future. If growth stalls below your rate, the gap compounds against you and your cushion thins over time. You might need fresh cash, new collateral, or to sell something after all, which realizes gains. Lenders also police uses. Some lines are non-purpose, meaning you can't use them to buy more securities. You sign purpose statements, and rules limit leverage on leverage. Guardrails exist even when the cash feels flexible. Meanwhile, unrealized gains still sit on paper. Taxes on wages, interest, or dividends can still apply separately. This loop targets capital gains, timing only. The loan adds obligations even when today's tax bill stays light. Over years, some people rinse and repeat. Assets compound, lines renew, and spending rides the credit. What finally resets the scoreboard is transfer. At death, basis rules can rewrite gains for heirs under current law. Under current law, many inherited assets take a new basis equal to fair market value at death. That reset often erases the decedent's built-up capital gain for income tax when heirs later sell. Heirs start fresh at that new basis. A later sale taxes only the gain above the date of death value. It's a timing change, not a cure-all, and it depends on the type of asset. Debts don't vanish at death. Loans and mortgages follow the estate and must be settled or refinanced. Those liabilities can reduce the taxable estate, but they still have to be paid by someone. For 2026 deaths, the federal estate tax filing threshold is $15 million per person. Many estates never file, but large ones can owe after subtracting debts and eligible deductions. Not everything gets a reset. Income in respect of a decedent, like some pre-tax retirement money, remains taxable to recipients. Heirs pay income tax when that money is received, even though other assets may have stepped up. So the end game is a swap. Lifetime gains can disappear for income tax, while debts and estate rules still bite. Next, run a simple family timeline. Hold versus sell after inheritance to see how choices ripple. After an inheritance, two clean options emerge. Sell now, or keep the asset and borrow instead. Each route shifts taxes, compounding, and risk in different ways across the years. Sell soon after a step up, and if prices barely moved, there's little capital gain to tax. You lock in cash and avoid loan risks, but future compounding from that asset stops. Keep the asset and open a credit line against it. Spend cash while the position stays unsold. You accept interest, lender limits, and market swings to keep potential compounding alive. Over decades, some stretches favor growth over interest, and a loop feels easy. Other stretches flip the math. When costs outrun returns, pressure builds. Real life adds drag. Fees, floating rates, collateral tests, plus taxable dividends or interest along the way. So discipline matters. Watch buffers, payments, and terms, not just a pretty diagram. The quiet lever is simple. Arrange spending so it rarely forces a sale. Avoiding sales keeps gains unrealized, which is why debt can become a tool, not a last resort. Some wealthy people replace a paycheck with a revolving credit line secured by the portfolio. Draws act like spending money, but they're loans. No sale happens and no wage is required. They often keep lines modest and cushions wide to avoid frantic calls when markets swing. Smaller draws and flexible spending make it less likely a bad week forces a sale. Collateral choice matters. Diversified holdings or steadier assets tend to support more predictable borrowing room. Lenders apply haircuts, so stability and diversification can translate into higher usable credit and fewer surprises. When markets drop, the playbook is simple. Trim spending, add collateral, or pay interest from other cash. The aim is to ride out volatility without crystallizing gains through a forced sale. The twist is this. Borrowing isn't a rescue move. It's a way to avoid selling and keep gains unrealized. If life ends while still holding, many assets get a basis reset for heirs. The loans must still be settled. That's why some high net worth people show tiny wages. Cash for life flows from loans, not paychecks. Next, pressure test the model against common objections and edge cases. Is this a loophole? It's a lawful timing pattern based on realization rules and the fact that loans aren't income. Legal doesn't mean effortless. Lenders, rates, and collateral risks still govern every move and outcome. Another myth. The interest bill disappears at tax time. Personal interest is generally not deductible for everyday spending. That means the carrying cost often lands after tax, making the growth minus rate test stricter. Lines can shrink or pause during turmoil, even without a sale. Lenders defend their collateral first. Sudden capacity cuts can force cash, top UPS, or smaller draws until prices recover. Rate shock is the other punch. A floating benchmark can reset higher during a downturn. Payments can jump as prices fall, so thick cushions and flexible spending aren't optional. This isn't only about stocks. Real estate and private businesses also hinge on a sale to recognize capital gain. Risks and cash flows differ by asset, but that sale triggers tax principle ties the story together. One more risk, policies and standards evolve. Tax rules or lending terms can shift the playbook. Stay mechanical, not prescriptive. Understand limits, keep clean records, and expect the framework to change over time. Condense the map. Buy assets that can grow, avoid selling, borrow for spending, and manage costs, cushions, and lender limits. At transfer, many assets can reset basis. Debts remain. Exceptions and estate thresholds still shape outcomes. Common misreads. Loans are free money. Debts vanish. Everything steps up. None of those is true. Loans add obligations. Estates settle liabilities, and IRD items stay taxable to recipients under current rules. Use a simple compass. If expected growth comfortably beats your after-tax borrowing cost, holding can feel workable. If costs outrun returns, pressure builds, cushions shrink. Forced sales can realize gains you meant to defer. Spend without selling by borrowing against appreciating assets while managing risk. Taxes on gains mostly wait for a sale. At death, many assets reset basis for heirs, but debts persist. Education, not financial advice. It breaks when markets fall, rates jump, lines shrink, or compliance and documentation slip. Rules and thresholds change. Treat this as description, not a plan. Obligations remain and must be paid. Now you can retell it. Buy, hold, borrow, manage risk, then transfer can reset basis for many assets. If this decoded the headlines, consider subscribing and sharing. Education, not financial advice.